Okay, so our topic today, we're going to go through an overview of the different parts of the digestive system. Now, one of the things that we have to do with the digestive system, this is our diagram here. Basically what this is a side shot of a guy's head. It's been opened up so you can see the different parts. You've got his mouth here, his nose. It doesn't come through real well on the camera, but it will come through in the export of the file that I send you. You will get a labeled copy, so no big deal. All right, now, one thing about this that we do have to talk about is the idea that our digestive tract has several names. You'll hear it called your GI tract, which stands for your gastrointestinal tract, that sort of thing. You'll hear sometimes the alimentary canal. All of these things mean the same thing. They all mean the tube that starts at your mouth and ends at your anus. Okay? Food goes in one end, waste comes out the other. That's it. Now, the thing that a lot of people don't tend to put together is that it's one tube. There are no branches. It doesn't go anywhere. It goes straight through the tube. Now, the tube is all sorts of complicated. It's all sorts of twisted up on itself, but there are no branches. It's one single tube, start to finish. Okay? So that's what we're going to work at, is some of the things that are attached to that tube. Most of the things that we talk about that are going to be attached to that tube are things that go into other systems, or things that we'll be dumping in, those things that we always like to refer to as digestive juices. What's the most common and most famous digestive juice?
Stomach acid.
Okay, stomach acid. There's another one that we all know about, and it's right up here at the top and where we're going to be starting.
Saliva.
Saliva. Saliva is actually a digestive juice. It's not there just to make things nice and mushy in your mouth. It's actually there to start breaking down food, okay? So we're going to be talking about where a lot of those things get added in. And tomorrow we're going to talk about all the processes of exactly what goes on to digest your food and break it down so that your body can absorb it, what happens in each place. Today is just going to be about a tool, okay? So we're going to start off first with the really simple parts. This is the mouth. I'm hoping you guys can all find the mouth, and that's not a real problem, okay? The next thing that we do need to talk about is basically, let's go ahead and label these as the obvious. Big white things in the front of the mouth. Teeth. Okay, good. We got that much. All right. Now, we get to the other things that start going on here. We got three different guys here. We got this guy, this guy. All three of them are in yellow here. They all have one job. This is where saliva comes from. These guys are called salivary glands. You got some that are just behind your teeth on the bottom. You got some that are basically attached to the bottom of your tongue, the underside of your tongue, and then you've got some that are at the top of your mouth toward the back. But they all have the same job. They dump saliva into your mouth to help with digesting things, okay? All right, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to start moving out of the mouth. The first place that we put food is in the mouth. But then the next thing, usually we refer to this next thing as the back of our throat, or just our throat. Okay? But what we're talking about is a section back here of this pipe that's inside this box. Okay? This is the part that's known as our pharynx. Now, our pharynx is a part of our throat that actually is basically there to connect a bunch of things. There are a lot of different parts that come together here. We've all seen the goofy trick where, you start laughing when you take a drink and it comes out your nose. Well, if your mouth and your nose are connected, they've got to be connected somewhere. Your pharynx is the connection, okay? Your pharynx is actually a big connector. It connects the mouth here, okay? Food coming in there. It connects up to the back of your nose up here, because you can breathe in through your nose and it gets down your throat, right? Or you can breathe through your mouth, so those have got to be connected. All right, well, when we get down to the bottom of the pharynx, we get a place for the food to go. Anybody know what that particular tube is called?
Esophagus?
Yeah, we got our esophagus. That's what this guy is here, okay? Okay, so things come out the esophagus at the bottom end, but there's one other pipe here that goes off to the side. Okay? Notice we got four different connections here. We got the back of the nose, we got the back of the mouth, we got going down the esophagus, and we got one other. What other place do we need things to go out of?
We need stuff to go to our lungs.
Yeah, we need a tube to go to our lungs. Well, that's what this is here. This is not a real great drawing of this. This just shows the top of it. That tube that's headed towards your lungs is called your trachea. We discussed that a little bit last week with the respiratory system and the cardiovascular system, okay? So we got the trachea over here. Now, that's what we've got going on. That's what the pharynx connects. It connects at the top, the nose and the mouth, things coming in, and then going down, it connects both the esophagus and the trachea. But it's one pipe for all those connections. So that's what the pharynx is, the back of our throat, or our throat. We can drop that word now from our vocabulary. I don't want to hear about, well, it was in my throat. Well, no, you've got a pharynx. You know what the word is now. Okay? All right. Now, we got one other little guy up here in the head and neck that we need to talk about. It's that little dark flap that's in here. What that flap is called it's called our epiglottis. I'm going to go ahead and put that in a slightly different color here to keep it separate. Okay? Our epiglottis. This is just a little flap of tissue that is at the top of the trachea. Basically what this does, this is the thing that controls whether it's food going down or whether it's air going down. If it's food going down, we need to close off the air pipe so we don't choke on anything, right? So that's what the epiglottis's job is. It's a little flap of tissue that when food is being swallowed or liquid is being swallowed, it will close off the trachea so nothing goes down your windpipe. This is what happens when you have the idea of something went down the wrong pipe. The epiglottis didn't get completely closed as something was going down. Usually you end up coughing and sputtering and hacking and choking and all sorts of fun things, which are all your body's response to, okay, this isn't supposed to be in this pipe, let's get it out of here. That's what a cough is. This is trying to get rid of something that's not supposed to be in that pipe. All right, are we good? This is the things that are in your neck and your head and on up. We need to be able to move on down the esophagus and keep labeling what we've got. All right, so let's scroll our way here. Bring the lower parts of our GI tract into our picture. Okay, so we've got our esophagus coming in from up here. Everybody knows where the esophagus goes. Where does it go? All right, that heads toward our stomach, right? That's this big old bag right here, stomach. Now, our stomach is not in the place that we usually point to. We go, oh, my stomach, oh, or sometimes it'll be over here. No, your stomach is actually up here, more underneath your rib cage, okay? And it's closer to center. It's right about here. Just off to your left side, up underneath your rib cage, okay? If you're down here holding anything that's below your lowest ribs, that's not your stomach, all right? That's down in your intestines. That's other parts of your guts, okay? Your stomach's up about here. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the stomach. The stomach is kind of closed off at both ends. It's got a little muscle. It's called a sphincter muscle, okay? Sphincter muscle is a muscle that squeezes something closed, usually a tube of some kind. It squeezes it closed. All right, so the stomach is closed off by those because basically when you start putting food in there and you got stomach acid, you want to keep that stuff under control. You don't want that just splashing around because your stomach's job is to churn things up and mix things up, okay? And if you start squeezing things around, it's kind of like trying to shake things up in a Ziploc bag that you haven't closed the zip on. Okay? Makes a mess. This is what happens when we get heartburn, is one of the zippers isn't closed very well, and that stomach acid ends up the esophagus on us. Very uncomfortable feeling. Not a good thing. Okay, now, after we get through the stomach, we go into a portion of what we usually, in our grade school definition, we just said, okay, we got the stomach, we got the small intestine, then we got the large intestine. Which is okay when we're in grade school. But the small intestine actually has 3 separate sections. They look a little different, and they do different things for our body. And so we label them differently. The large intestine actually has about 5 different sections. Now, they do mostly the same thing. We'll get to that in a minute. All right, let's talk a little bit about our next section here. The next section is this little bit of tube here. Now, it runs kind of down behind the large intestine here. But this little tube is where the stomach and the small intestine connect. It's the first section of the small intestine. This is what's referred to as our duodenum. Okay? Our duodenum is the first section of the small intestine. It's there kind of as a mixing bag because this is where most of the other organs that we've thought about as being kind of part of our digestive system, the ones that dump digestive juices in, they all pretty much dump them right here in the duodenum. Okay? This is getting the food ready to travel through the rest of our guts so that we can absorb all the nutrients out of them that we possibly can. Okay? Now, let's take a short time out here to look at those other organs that dump those digestive juices in. We got three major ones. They're all right here. We got this little green guy over here. This is our gallbladder. Responsible for storing and then releasing bile into our duodenum. Okay? Then we've got this big red guy here. This is our liver. Okay? This guy is responsible for a lot of different things in our body, but for this case, it's the place where we originally make most of the bile. Okay? And then it gets stored in the gallbladder. Now, one other guy here, you see this kind of almost feather or leaf-shaped guy here. He kind of hides behind the stomach. He's not really all that big. This picture shows him a little bit large, but basically this guy here is your pancreas. Okay? So all three of those have ducts, little tubes, that attach to the duodenum and dump digestive juices in there to help us move the process along. Okay? So those guys are not part of the tube, but they are attached to it. They have little ducts that dump things into it. All right? Okay, so once we move out of the area of the duodenum, we attach to what we normally think of, this big jumbled up mess of the small intestine. Now remember, the small intestine is called the small intestine because it's the smaller tube. It's not as big around as the large intestine. It's much longer though. It's about the size of the tube, not the length of the tube. All right, this next section here that kind of sits in here, like that. That first part of the maze, now it's not really much of a maze because it's just one folded up tube. You can't get lost. You go in and you keep going. It's just twisted. Okay? It's more like a twisted cave than it is any kind of a maze. All right? This next section is called your jejunum. Okay? That entire section, that twisted up maze, is the jejunum. Now, once the food goes through there and we've taken out a lot of the nutrients and a lot of different things have happened, we move on into another section here. This section that's this last part of the small intestine here is known as our ileum. The ileum winds around and does the last little things. The ileum is the section of the small intestine where it goes and attaches to the large intestine. It exits out right through this area and moves on into this next region that we need to talk about. We've got this little area right here. Okay? That guy is the beginning of the large intestine. It's kind of an entryway. It's basically like the pharynx was. It's a connection area where everything kind of takes a pause and gathers itself and gets organized before moving on. Okay? This is what we call our cecum. Now, you might notice that there's this little green thing hanging off the bottom down here. That little green thing is a part of our body. We all know what it is, except we don't usually think of where it is and what it is. We've all heard of it. It's our appendix. Okay? This is that little guy that gets all inflamed and infected and causes us problems. And, well, because it has no real purpose, if it's causing a problem, they go in and they cut it out. Done. Okay? Now, to get that sort of thing going on, we can ask those questions in a little while. Okay? Now, the appendix there, that's basically the thing. If it gets infected, it doesn't have a serious purpose for the body, so they go in, they snip it off, they sew up the bottom of the cecum, and we move on. Because it doesn't really do much for the human body. Alright, next thing that we need to do is we need to take a look at, now we are in the part of the body called the large intestine. Now, the large intestine is often also called the colon. Now, you'll notice that a lot of your vocab words refer to this and that and the other colon. Well, really, the colon is all one big tube that kind of goes and makes a box around your guts. It comes up your right side, goes across below your stomach, goes down your left side, goes back to the middle. So it basically makes a box around the small intestines. It kind of wraps around. Now, it does pretty much the same job most of the way through. But because things are moving in completely different directions and going in a box, each of the sections kind of has its own name. And the names just tell you where it's going. Okay? The first part is called the ascending colon. To ascend means to go up. This is because the material has come in from the ileum and starts going up from the cecum. That's it. That's all that it is. Okay? So this section, ascending colon. Then, once it goes up that portion of the tube, guess what we got going on? It's going to go across. Well, when we go through things like this, the word for going across something like this is called transverse, this sideways motion. Okay, so this is our transverse colon. All right, let's go ahead and grab a different color here. Now, as we go and continue across the tube, we go up, we go across. The next part is the part that goes, that didn't work out real well, green on green. Let's try that again. This section that runs right through here is what's known as the descending colon. Alright, so our descending colon goes down on our left side. Not a real complicated set of instructions, right? Ascend, go across, go down. Ascending, transverse, descending. Okay, now, we got one more section in your vocab of things called colon. Well, that's because there's this section right here that basically goes across. Okay? This going across thing, it's more of a centering up, really. It's called the sigmoid colon. This is aiming things correctly. Because we all know where this story ends, right? This story ends in a toilet. At least we hope so. Okay? Alright, we got two more parts here. Everything getting set for this, right? Alright, we got this part of the tube right here. That little part of the tube that aims things down is called your rectum. And the final part of the digestive tract, before everything gets turned loose and exits to the outside world, the valve keeping this closed, the opening here, is called your anus. Okay? So there we are. We now have a labeled diagram from top to bottom of our gastrointestinal tract, our digestive tract, our alimentary canal, whatever you want to call this. This is where all those guts are, okay? Now, you're going to need to be able to label this picture. You're going to need to be able to know what's what and where's where, okay? We'll talk tomorrow about where all of those sorts of things are and exactly what they do. So that's going to be where we finish up this video. If you could please hit the stop button, that would be awesome.